I'm just curious, how many people in here have been writing code for more than 10 years? It's about maybe 25% of the room, and we've got some seniors in here. Anybody in here over 20 years? That's the same hands. It's the exact same hands. All right, well, all the gray hairs, they came in here to join me. Yeah, I'm in the same boat. And in fact, it's weird. Like, I've told my wife this too. I can't figure out if there's some point where I'm supposed to stop writing code and instead finally manage people, but I just really like writing code. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I tried managing people, but do you guys know how many meetings you go to when you do that? It's just all day long, like just talking about work. I want to do some work. Yeah. Yes.
But I'm a digital plumber.
Digital plumber, yes. Uh-huh. So then you're in DevOps, correct? There you go. That's digital plumber. Yeah.
You built a frame, deal with every flooding issue that inevitably happens.
Love it.
Something done. Yeah, I'll deal with the consequences.
So then a designer would be like a digital interior decorator?
There's the architect, then there's the UI,
Yes.
interior designer.
Okay. Yeah. I love comparisons like that.
Your API technicians or your electrical.
Yes.
Everything else to connect to itself.
Yep. True.
Leave everything leave all the wires, spread around that big for the interior designer to deal with.
Yeah. All right, it is 1 on the money. I have no idea whether the other rooms are ready, but we're going to assume so. Let's dig in because we are going to talk about trade-offs. Rich Hickey gave a wonderful talk many years ago, and the quote that really stuck with me that he said was, "Programmers know the benefits of everything and the trade-offs of nothing." And I have been guilty at many points in my career of being dogmatic, of saying the words always and never, and that's rarely the right answer. So think of this talk as a little nudge to avoid those. And what I want to do is just draw a light on software laws. And when I say software laws, it may not mean anything to you, but my definition of it is maxims that spotlight trade-offs. So we're going to look at a number of these, and the theme of this talk isn't just software, it's also life. You're going to see me jumping between the two because frankly, the things that we do to write good software also tend to make our lives better as well. And so effectively, this is a bit of a talk on life philosophy. The favorite one I'm going to start with, which is the first law of ecology, which says that you can never merely do one thing. I'm here today, I'm from Kansas City. I have 3 kids, and I won't see them this weekend because I chose to be here, and that's a trade-off, and you can never change one thing. So in some minor way, I'm slightly less connected to my kids so that I could focus on my career today. Every single day, all of us are making trade-offs like that between our loved ones and our career and our lives. This guy that's working out is spending time doing that instead of getting better at Angular. So it's a trade-off, whatever that may be. Now, I'm up here speaking. This was me in 2010. The reason I'm up here speaking today is because in 2010, my biggest fear was to be up in front of a crowd. It just sounded terrifying. And I went to a conference, and I sat down. This was a free conference in my hometown of Kansas City. And I remember walking into the lunchroom, and I looked around, and I was pretty darn shy. Like, I felt very uncomfortable walking up to a table of people that I didn't know. And then so I finally sheepishly, I sit down at a table in the corner that felt safe, and then I find out it's all speakers. Like, what could be more terrifying than that? Now they're like, "Oh, what are you speaking on?" I'm going, "I'm not speaking. I'm sorry. I can leave." They're like, no, stay. You can sit. But having that conversation with them was actually really helpful to me. And later, I submitted to speak at that conference, and I got accepted. And I spoke, and I didn't die. It was not great, but I didn't die. Like, I got it done. And over time, I have found that strangely, here it is 2025, and more or less my job is talking to people. The thing that became my greatest fear is now, I think, one of my strengths, because if you keep doing something that is hard and you do it more and more often, then you will get good at it. Applies all over the place. When you've got a production deploy and you guys keep screwing up production deploys, do it more often. If you do it more often, you're going to get better at it, and then you're going to be incentivized to automate as much as you can. And by speaking over time, like this was just, I believe this was 2 or 3 years after I started speaking, I found myself in San Francisco at a conference called Fluent that was put on by O'Reilly. This was a workshop where I had 350 people in the room. And this was just, I mean, still to this day, I've never had a bigger workshop than that. It was phenomenal. But that was right when React was just, everybody was starting to want to learn it. And it was just this almost spiritual moment. I'm like, this is amazing. Like going from the guy that was scared to do public speaking, like now I've got this opportunity. It is amazing. And you don't know. You can't change only one thing. I didn't realize how much getting better at public speaking would just make me more comfortable everywhere. I was more comfortable talking to executives. I was more comfortable going to a party with my wife and meeting strangers and just mixing. Like all of that comes from this one thing. Another example of trade-offs. I had the opportunity many years ago when I had a full-time job. I got a job offer from Microsoft, and I was torn for the longest time on this. And ultimately I passed, and still to this day I sort of wonder, like you think about, there's movies that talk about this, like Sliding Doors, where you have these two paths in life, and you've got to make this hard decision. And ultimately, I decided to say no because I knew the thing that I wanted more than anything was to be independent. And I had this opportunity to do it right at the moment that I finally got a darn offer from my dream company. So I chose to go independent, and that is absolutely a story of trade-offs. There's all these benefits. I love the freedom that I have. I love getting to focus on all these different things that are interesting to me. I love working with a bunch of different teams and all the variety, but if you saw my income and you saw it doing this, that is life. I mean, I've had income that's way up here is amazing, and then I've had it way down here where you go, oh, this is scary. And that is one of the very obvious things. There are times that I have a feeling like I don't have one boss, I have 6 or 7 bosses. So it's very difficult to get away. Absolutely a story of trade-offs. But the first law of ecology says you can never merely do one thing. Everything is interconnected. And there's an idea called Shipley's 6 dimensions, which I really like, which gets at 6 different trade-offs in software as well. Brevity of code, featurefulness, speed of execution. Think of these 6 things. Like, this is trade-offs. If you tell me to make the speed of execution faster, then I might have to sacrifice, well, time spent coding, obviously, because I'm going to have to go spend more time coding. It works, but you're saying it's not fast enough. The moment you tell me to make it more flexible, well, the brevity of my code's probably going to go down because now I've got to write more code to handle that flexibility. I need more conditionals in it. These 6 things all push and pull on one another. They are trade-offs. So if somebody says, I want the absolute fastest execution, recognize that they're going to sacrifice some of these other things. And when they say, our product is the most flexible, well, you know what? I bet you it's not the fastest because you guys probably sacrifice speed to make something super flexible. There's the simpler version of this, which is the iron triangle. Good, fast, cheap, pick 2. These also get you thinking in terms of that. And you can look at your own job and ask, how do we think about the iron triangle on my team? How often are we fixated on fast without realizing that we're going to sacrifice either good or cheap? These are the trade-offs that we want to talk about today. And the risk with any of these things is myopic focus. And you probably know some people that are this way, where they want to fixate on, we've got to have a clean Git history. I mean, I'm always over here rebasing, and I'm very carefully rewriting history, and it's all got to be pristine. And to what end? Is it just because I have this neurotic desire for everything to be perfect, or is it truly a business benefit? And this happens all over the place. Think about security. All right, we're going to make things secure. Well, security is a trade-off too. I bet you've been in this situation where you feel like the security team's job is to make sure that you can't do yours. I've had that. It's very frustrating. Like there's a point where security goes too far. I can't even get in the building today. My badge is here, but that's not enough. We need a birth certificate. TypeScript, another example. If you're hanging out in types, the question is it worth the time that I'm spending typing this thing? There are a bunch of downsides to TypeScript. Now, clearly, I'm out here authoring courses on TypeScript, so clearly I'm a big fan of it. But I recognize it is a trade-off too. There's nothing free. I say this too because I was in a session a while back where somebody was working in JavaScript and the presenter was teaching TypeScript. And they said, is there any reason I shouldn't do TypeScript? And he said, no, you should absolutely do TypeScript. No context, no nothing. I go, well, that's speaking in absolutes again. There's no context, there's no nuance. So when we talk about trade-offs like security, I just mentioned this. It's a trade-off. Yes, it's safer. We have more confidence. But you might give people hassles. People may actually just give up on your service because it's so annoying. If you require two-factor authentication, yes, it's more secure. But a lot of people are intimidated by 2FA. So maybe you don't want to require that. I am a consultant. As a consultant, I specialize. I'm really good at React and TypeScript and automated testing. That's kind of my trifecta. So I help front-end teams in that area. And there's a lot of benefits to being a specialist, not the least of which is higher potential returns. Like I could tell you, if you are a specialist in the right thing, like right now, if you are somebody that is known for AI, you're printing money. Everybody wants you. And if you can prove to people that you've already done things successful, that's really valuable. But what's the nature of every specialization is, it's higher risk. At some point, it may not be the new hotness. If you were the Angular 1 guy, well, now you've got to move on to be the Angular whatever version it's on now. It's always moving. And interest in any of these things changes. Also, as a specialist, this is certainly true for me. I find I have to travel a lot, and I have to constantly keep up with everything. It's this feeling of a river that's moving by, and I've got to constantly have an opinion on all this stuff. That's stressful. You've got to go where the work is. Now, I like travel, so that works, but boy, it's a trade-off. One another example, a monorepo. Are monorepos good or bad? Well, it depends. I'm sort of a fan, but I also have been extremely frustrated by monorepos at times, so frankly, I don't know. They are absolutely a trade-off, and as a team, we've got to decide whether the good outweighs the bad here. I have definitely felt the pain of slower CI builds when a monorepo gets too large, and there's this feeling of, you know what, I think we need to divide this up. We need to find clear lines. There's a book that I read recently that I refer more people to this book than any, which is Essentialism. And I absolutely love the book Essentialism. One line will sum the book up. Stop asking, how can I do it all? And start asking, what do I want to go big on? That is Essentialism in a nutshell. And when I read that book, it was very clear to me, I knew what I wanted to go big on, which was I wanted to go big on front-end development, and in particular, big in React. And I wanted to be cohesive, though. So I wanted to also be really good at automated testing. I wanted to be able to teach well. So I had this short list of things that I was going all in on. And that was scary because that meant that I'm going to sort of ignore my C# skills. I'll put those on a shelf because I don't have time to keep up with everything. Nobody does. It's all trade-offs. Now, what's interesting is I show this other book, Range, up here because these two books are sort of boxing against one another. They're pulling because Essentialism is talking about the benefits of specialization, but Range talks about the benefits of generalization. And so it's perfect for this talk because, yes, being a generalist is also important. And my suggestion, if I were to say just career advice for anybody that's early in their career in software, is taste as much ice cream as you can. Like, just get a bunch of different flavors, okay? How many languages, how many frameworks, how many libraries? Say yes to everything for a while. See if you can move through a bunch of different jobs at different companies. Then start paying attention to two things. One, where's the opportunity? Where is it that no one else wants to do this thing, but I don't mind it? For me, that was JavaScript, because I was on a C# team, and everybody thought JavaScript was a crap language compared to C# because it is. But I went, I don't care, that's fine. I said, all right, I'll do JavaScript, and on that team, I really made a name for myself. So they threw me all the difficult stuff in JavaScript, and over time, I became the front-end specialist guy. But early on, before that, I was already getting range because I had already experienced doing back-end work, doing DevOps, doing all sorts of different things, but I paid attention to what I liked the most. So pay attention to what you liked and where you're needed. That is what I suggest early on before you choose to go big on that one thing. And also recognize going big on one thing is not a life decision. In fact, like right now, I am trying to decide if my next big one thing should be AI, because AI is such a big thing. It doesn't feel like the sort of thing that I can just, I'm using it every day. I'm familiar with lots of LLMs. I'm putting them to use day to day, but it feels like it might be an opportunity for me to just totally dive into that. That's fine. You can redefine yourself whenever. I think about musicians. You ever think about like Michael Jackson and his career, and he released Thriller, and then later he released Bad, and how different his image was between them. Like he's got a very different look and feel and nose, like you name it. You can redefine yourself. So that was the first theory, that you can never change one thing. The second law is we can solve any problem by introducing an extra level of indirection. And this is a risky business. This comes up when you're around people who love abstractions, who read patterns books, and then start looking for ways to use the patterns. Like, how can I use all the patterns in this ticket? That's not ideal. These are ways to solve problems via indirection. The problem with fixating on solving all these problems via abstraction is all problems in computer science can be solved by another level of indirection, except for the problem of too many. And I have felt this. If you go too far with, say, small functions, then you start to feel disoriented by the fact that every line of code is one-line functions. Here's a one-line function, here's a one-line function, and you're jumping all over the place, and you're jumping into a bunch of files, and it feels like it's so fragmented that it's hard to hold in your head because there's this infinite number of pieces. Now, you can, of course, go the other way and write a 1,000-line function, and that's probably a mistake, too. So there's a balance somewhere in between there. Now, the over-abstractor is somebody who will prematurely genericize things. I remember working with an over-abstractor. This was back when we were working in Knockout. This was back right when Angular 1 was about to come out and React was about to come out. And he said, so I think we should wrap Knockout so later we can move to React or Angular or whatever if those end up being more popular. Now, it turned out they did end up being more popular, but that doesn't change the fact that his idea was bad. Very bad, because think about, how do I write an abstraction for something that I haven't seen? How do I write an abstraction for something that's always changing? I would have to find some kind of common denominator. That is over-abstraction. But there are certainly under-abstractors as well. You might be with someone on the team who will copy and paste everything, never reuse anything. They'll create their own stuff. They'll create God classes, like a class just called do all the things, not useful. So, yeah, yes. And dry is another example where things get taken too far. Yes, not repeating yourself is important, but when you over dry code, you do something that's unfortunate, which is you reduce locality of behavior. So the moment that I extract a function and I put it over in this other file, I have now taken what was local behavior and I've made it now some separate behavior over here. And so that means when I read it, I'm now jumping between files, whereas with one function, I can read that function top down. That's the trade-off being made. And exactly when to extract a function and when it's too far is a gray line. But I want to point out there's a lot of downsides to over-drying your code. The line for me depends greatly on exactly what it is. Like I can't say a number of lines because sometimes it's a big switch statement or a big map or there's just a lot of data involved, but it's not conceptually complicated. I don't mind a long function. But other times it's a super dense idea and it's opaque and it's hard to read. Maybe it's just a regex. Well, I would like that regex sitting in a function that documents what the regex should do. And that way I could test that regex in isolation, that sort of thing. So it really depends on complexity. All right, the next law, the Fairbairn threshold. This is the point at which the effort of looking up something outweighs the effort of rederiving or inlining it. So, in other words, it's the point when copy or paste or inlining is preferable. So for example, here I've created a function called log_err, and inside of it, it calls console.err. Now all my call sites are going to have a few less characters. But was this actually useful? No, I don't think so. This fails to meet the threshold. This is more work to look it up than it's worth. So avoid taking small methods to the extreme. Avoid over-abstraction. Remember that every abstraction has a cost. Okay, this is the law that I use the most as a consultant. It comes up all the time, and I feel like it may be at the source of most problems in software development, which is that we tend to have the wrong organizational structure. Melvin Conway said, any organization that designs a system will inevitably produce a design whose structure is a copy of the org's communication structure. Years ago, I was working at Cox Automotive, and we had a monolithic application for automotive dealerships. We hit the point where we had so many developers working on this monolith that we were really struggling because nobody understood the whole thing. It was way too complicated, and if I was asked to build a feature in some areas, I didn't know enough about it to feel very confident. So we realized what we needed to do was actually have multiple separate teams so that people could become knowledgeable about a little slice of this gigantic monolith. So what we did was we said, all right, Cory, you're going to be a team lead. Tom, you're going to be a team lead. Chris, you'll be a team lead. And you are responsible for this tab. You're responsible for this tab. You're responsible for this feature over here. And so now our organizational structure said, okay, I want this little piece of the application just to be my domain. So what did we do? Well, then we started talking about how can we re-architect the code so that you and I aren't stepping on each other's toes. Like, I need to know that my slice of the app works, and I'd also like to be able to deploy my slice of the app. Lots of ways to do this. You've probably heard of micro front ends as one way to go, or more broadly, vertical slicing, that sort of thing. But the point is, if you are struggling as a team to interact with one another, it might just be a sign that your organizational structure isn't proper given your software. And there's a interesting idea called the reverse Conway maneuver, which is where you actually do a reorg to foster the restructure. And that's exactly what we did. We reorged and we created a bunch of separate teams so that we could therefore have a lot of separate applications instead of a monolith. So I was a team lead, and then my other fellow team leads were responsible for figuring out how to split this monolith into pieces. And there was a study that had found that the product developed by a loosely coupled organization is significantly more modular than the product from a tightly coupled organization. So think modular, and think about the Conway's law in particular. I have also seen problems. This is another area where I'll see an automated testing team, and they will be completely separate from the development team that they serve. And when you have complete separation there, what do you think happens? Well, often what happens is the automated testing team has their tests in a separate repository. They might even be using different testing tools than the developers. That's unfortunate. Ideally, since their shared goal is to have this application be reliable, ideally they would report to the same person, and they'd operate as one team instead of two teams. So that's where Conway's law can really be helpful, is let's create a structure that encourages us to collaborate. Okay, next up, McLuhan's law. We shape our tools, and then thereafter, our tools shape us. So if I've got a monolith, that's going to shape me into one large team. This is hearkening back already to Conway's law, though. If I have static types, then I find that I tend to think in types. Like when I'm working in C# or TypeScript, and I've got a problem to solve, I think first about my data structures and creating the types that help define those. Then I might iterate on those some. When I'm doing automated testing, the tools shape me again, because now I start thinking in edge cases. I'm like, well, what about zero? What about an empty string? What about null? What about undefined? What about a giant array? So my tooling in this case is putting me into a mindset. Another example of this is my home office. So in my home office, I have a treadmill desk, and I've had this for 8 or 9 years now, and I love it. I absolutely love it. I would encourage you to consider getting one. There are studies that show that walking on a treadmill while working keeps you more alert. It also improves memory retention. So if you're reading an article while you are walking, you will retain more of it. I've certainly feel that way. It's really helpful. It takes a little while to get used to coding because typing while walking is awkward for some people, but you do get used to it. Ergonomic keyboards help. Now, the reason I show this is in the morning, when I come into my office, it is always like the picture on the right because I end my day by taking my desk and putting it up at the top level. Why do I do that? Exactly, so that when I walk in the morning, the tool shapes me because the easiest thing for me to do is to get on the treadmill and start walking. If I had to raise my desk first or if I had to position the treadmill, I might not do it. I might just sit down in the chair. And I know in the morning, I want the thing that I want to do, I want to make that the easy thing. We had a conversation out in the hall about this very thing. Like, if there's something that your senior developers most need to be doing, it's looking at your organization and saying, how can we make the right thing the easy thing? We want to make it actually more attractive to do the right thing than the wrong. And we want to make it hard to do the wrong thing. Next law. When a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. All right. Who can think of an example of this happening in software development? Hand up here. The Jira burn down chart. Yes, we were talking out in the hall about that very thing. Thank you. Another example? Oh, down here? Bug count. Yes. Yes. And that ties back to my talk this morning when we were showing the comics. Yeah, the story points are a great example. Yes?
My absolute favorite. How many issues did we see? Let's stop looking.
Yes, issues.
How many errors? Oh, we just stopped submitting logs. That fixed it, right? We just hit the alarm.
Yes. The risk is human nature fixates on trying to optimize for whatever we've been told to optimize. So if my boss is fixated on story points, then we're going to start gamifying story points. And if he says that the team next door did twice as many story points, then all we're going to do is change our estimates so that we put more story points on all our tickets. We're going to make it look different. We're going to change our structure. And the problem is that doesn't mean that he's going to get what he wants. It just means that we are manipulating the system. So if you're trying to measure developer productivity via these sorts of things, you can do this. And actually, I'm not against monitoring these things. I think monitoring, this is signal, but the problem is the moment that I tell my development team that I'm monitoring the number of tickets they close or the number of lines of code that they commit, now they're going to optimize for it. So here's what I would do. I actually had a director who did this. He quietly watched all of this. And then he even showed me. He said, I just want you to know, the guy that you reported to me that you said you can't ever get a hold of, we monitor how many pull requests everybody in the company does. The top person in the company did over 400 pull requests. The guy you complained about, he did 3 the entire year. So I think you're onto something. Now, given, there could be a good reason that somebody only does 3 pull requests in a year. Maybe not a whole lot of good reasons, but there could be some. Maybe it was a really awesome set of pull requests. But as a full-time developer, seems unlikely. Bill Gates said, measuring programming progress by lines of code is like measuring aircraft building progress by weight. We don't want people thinking, all right, I've got to create more code so that people say I wrote the most lines of code. Because more lines of code is not better, for sure. What we want is functionality. So what I want to point out here is fixation on hard numbers may actually reduce quality. Yeah, it's attractive to do these things. And this is where I need to pivot for a second into the real world, into the personal side of things. I've thought for a long time about personal success. And the nature of success is you have to define it. Everybody in here has a different opinion about what success means to them. You can get a sense of it, though, if I asked you, if you think about someone successful that's well known, who's the first person that comes to mind? And if you... Thank you. That's winning. I'll give you your prize after. Yeah. So, for instance, if you said Bill Gates, well, that says something. Maybe it's because you really value being successful in software, or maybe it's because you're very money-oriented and he comes to mind as somebody that's rich. It depends. But if you said Mother Teresa, that's a very different statement about your values. Now, I'll be honest that things like net worth and salary have been a very big deal to me. And I think it's partially because growing up, I never felt like we had much. I remember I wanted name brand shoes and we couldn't afford it. And that was something that I think scarred me. Like going to school, everybody else had Nikes and I had the Payless shoes. And I hated that. And it really drove me as an adult. I'm going, all right, I'm going to work hard so I can dress better one day. But the problem with all these things is hard numbers are easy to measure, but fixating on these things can actually reduce the quality of your life. For years, I was so focused on net worth and salary that I darn near lost my marriage, and I didn't see my kids much. And there was a point where my wife said, enough. Because she goes, we don't need more money. What we need is for you to find some kind of way to not work constantly. Like you're out of control. There was a year I went to 17 conferences, and my kids were young. And that was just one thing I was doing among also trying to author courses and have a full-time job. It was way out of whack. So I say all that to say, House's law. I'm going to introduce a law in this talk. The things most worth measuring are the hardest to measure. And if I were to measure, for instance, developer productivity, if I really want to know whether a developer's productive, I want to know if they're reliable. Can I trust them with a task? Will they actually do it? Do they have a positive attitude? Are they a pleasure to be around? Are they a team player? Like, are they willing to actually try to lift other people up, or are they just selfish and focused on their own things? Do they have a growth mindset rather than a fixed mindset? A side note, I love this book, Mindset. If you haven't, I highly recommend it. Do they write readable code? Can people understand what they do? And are they humble? Are they willing to say, I'm wrong? Are they willing to ask questions? Are they willing to say, I don't know, please help me? Even if they're a senior, because all of us are learning in an unpredictable way. We're all coming to conclusions in different times. The thing is, all of this is hard to measure, but it's a much better quality indicator. So how do we do this? This is why a good manager is actually interacting with everybody regularly, because you can't go look at a chart and see these things, but this is what's actually important. And measuring personal success, well, I would say it's about relationships. In fact, the quote that I heard, and I've been thinking a lot about this, is success in life is if the people that you want to love you, love you. Like that strikes me as pretty obvious. Like if I don't have that, then what do I have? Like imagine you could be sitting on millions of dollars and just be alone and sad. And success is about growth. Like hopefully you are constantly getting better, and you're not comparing yourself to others, you're comparing yourself to who you were yesterday. Contribution, giving back to others, even if you don't have to. Like I know, like here's something controversial. Lots of people hate on Elon, but recognize that Elon could be sitting on a beach drinking margaritas until he dies, but he's choosing to do something that he thinks is useful. Now, whether you actually think everything he's doing is useful is totally separate, but I do want to emphasize, and he's just one example among many. Like Jeff Bezos kept working at Amazon long after he needed to. Trust, autonomy, and of course happiness. Like if you're not happy, then what is this all about at all? Again, all of this stuff is hard to measure, but it's a better indicator of success to me. So the things most worth monitoring are hard to measure. And I want to emphasize, though, that measurement is not bad. I would just encourage you to avoid focusing on hard numbers and avoid focusing on a single measurement. I, for way too long, was just looking at my salary. And then later, I was just looking at my net worth. And by doing that, I was not looking at the fact that my wife and kids were very unhappy with me. It's a much bigger world. And in the software space, there was a time that I was so fixated on clean code, on trying to make my code pristine, trying to gold plate it, that my boss would get annoyed and go, we've got to ship. Like it's good enough. Just stop. You need, part of professionalism is knowing when good enough is good enough. And I know that's a gray line. Okay, now those were the ones that I definitely wanted to cover, but now we're going to move into some bonus. The Bennett principle, which says that the value we receive from an activity is proportional to the energy invested, this applies to public speaking. So anytime that I give a talk, I have to put a huge amount of effort into it, and I guarantee I learn more preparing the talk than anybody that attends that talk. Also, when you go on vacation, you could just sit there and watch TV in your hotel room, and that would be the easiest thing to do. But what if you actually interacted with your spouse and interacted with your kids, and you created special games, and you planned all these things and you got out and you worked and you hiked, well, you're going to get a lot more out of your trip that way by putting in more energy. The value received is proportional. And I'll say this too. I've put a huge amount of energy into my career, and it has also been wonderful what it's given back to me. Like I would say I'm at conferences a lot because some of my best friends are at conferences. Like there's a lot of people that go to many events, and I just love hanging out with the community. It's wonderful. You put more time in, you get more reward. And there's so many examples in here. Creating is generally going to be more valuable than consuming. Effort during leisure tends to actually be better than lounging. All of these. All right, I'm going to get past this. Hick's Law. The more options a user has, the longer it takes them to make a decision. So this UI is super intimidating because of all it has there. And this is how we get to that trade-off of thinking about less is more. Quality doesn't necessarily increase functionality. And in particular, I want to point out this idea from Barry Schwartz. He wrote the book Paradox of Choice. And in that book, he makes a great point, which is that having more options makes us miserable. And I've seen this in my life. In fact, in some ways, I think it's something that I'm really struggling with now. Like, I feel like I'm at a point in my career where I could do like a number of different things, and it's making me miserable because I can't figure out whether I'm making the wrong decision. There's a study that he talks about in the book where they set up a table and they put all these jellies out on the table. 50 some odd different flavors of jelly, and people would come up and they'd go, you could try any one you want. And a lot of people would just kind of look at it and get overwhelmed, and then they wouldn't try anything. Whereas when they just had 2 or 3, people would go, oh, I can pick between strawberry and grape. All right, I'll take strawberry. So the nature of this is we have to, at some point, this is also why I am very happy I got married. Like, I remember being very torn about whether to propose to my wife because I'm like, man, this is a rather big deal. This is right up there with the biggest of big deals. But after I did, after I committed and we're in it, like, I feel so relieved because I go, now I've made my decision. Now we're going to build a life together, and we're going to go through bumps, but it is now a decision made, and it is miserable going through life without some kind of a commitment there. And there's lots of examples of this in the industry, of things like, all right, Steve Jobs came in and just wrote a little matrix like this. He said, you guys have so many different products here at Apple. And when he came back, he said, all right, we're going to have consumer, pro, desktop, portable. 4 products. Let's make those all world-class products. Just 4 things. And get rid of all this other stuff. And it's sad, like, since Steve passed, now we've got a bunch of different colors of iPhones. Like, I got to wonder if he would have gone down this road. There's it feels like some of this is lost where you add in like needless variation. I'm going to get past all this too. Okay, one other. So I'm on the internet a lot. You probably are too. And Cunningham's Law comes up, which is the best way to get an answer to a problem is to post the wrong answer. I don't deliberately do this, but if you follow me on Twitter, you will often see that I've ended up having to eat my words because I will say, here's something I just learned. Here's this thing that I'm doing. Check out this technique. This is really useful. And somebody goes, you're doing it the hard way. Don't you know about this library? Why don't you use this instead? Actually, you've got a syntax error. This doesn't even compile. Like all these things. And I go, okay, actually, you're right. Well, thank you very much. It is. So instead of saying, for instance, what's the simplest way to split a string in JS? Well, no, you just go ahead and post this. Here's why Kotlin's the best programming language. Like, post your opinion. Make it clear, and then somebody, some reply guy is going to come in and try to knock you down. And that's okay. Like Cunningham's Law is a tool for good. Get better answers by posting. Like I did this. I posted that I had reduced our CI build time. And I posted all the different things that I'd done in there. And this was amazing because so many people replied with other things they had done to reduce theirs. And then they pointed out some things that I did. They're like, you know, actually, I would question that. But it is so helpful. Oh, yeah, like these are the replies in here. Yeah, also cache your dependencies. Oh, this week I migrated. Here, check out multi-stage Docker. Like, so many things like that. Okay, one more. The law of diminishing returns. This comes up all over the place. So I'm a car guy. And the Bugatti would be an example of well beyond the law of diminishing returns. Like, you probably don't need a 1,000 horsepower car. Might be fun. But the point of diminishing returns applies all over the place. Automated testing is a great example. Is 100% really necessary? Is that the point? Do we really need to be on the latest version the very moment that it drops, or should we maybe have a cadence of every month or two? Should we dictate that everybody pair programs 100% of the time? Or should we, on the other hand, forbid it and say nobody does? No, probably neither of those are right. There's probably some diminishing return where I don't think 100% pair programming probably pays off. Yes, you could keep buying faster computers for your team, but again, diminishing returns are there. Also with conferences, same thing. I was going to too many conferences. I got a lot of value out of going to a couple a year, but when I went to 17, I don't think the last few were really moving the needle much. Same story with all this stuff in your life. Like, it's really easy to get on a hedonic treadmill. It's crazy to me. Like, it's sad how many people end up creating a situation where they have to work until they're 65 or 70 or until they are unable, simply because they kept elevating their lifestyles. And they don't recognize that there's just diminishing returns. Like, all of us here are relatively wealthy compared to a huge portion of humans alive in the world in history. I mean, it hasn't been very long that a lot of this technology even existed at all. We are pretty darn lucky regardless. So that's something that I've been really sensitive to, is how can I avoid improving basically, how can I avoid the hedonic treadmill? How can I just say, my house is good enough, my car is good enough, I would rather save money for another day so I have more optionality. So these are some of the examples that I was giving up. Yeah, another one. How much time should I spend trying to type this thing before I give up? Like, there are diminishing returns on all these. Here's how I think about cars. Like, you look at these two things and you go, okay, yeah, I could get the Honda or I could get the new BMW, and okay, is it really worth 5 times as much money? Well, I'm a car guy, but honestly, if some alien just came out of the sky and looked at this, it'd be like, meh, these are the same. I'll set them both on fire. I don't care. It's just two big metal boxes with people in them. You know, it doesn't matter. Or you think about computers, like, this is slightly dated, but I could have bought a MacBook Pro for $3,400, or I could have bought the maxed out Mac Pro for $53,000. And yeah, I couldn't believe you could spec it this high, but yeah, $53,000 computer. Diminishing returns. Is this worth 15 times the money? I mean, I could compile TypeScript so much faster, that'd be, yeah. All right. So to close this out, I think time check, I got 5 minutes, right? We all agree? Okay. These are the laws, but I want to get here to the end because automated testing, I already talked about this before. It is, yeah, when I ask people to tell me about their team's testing strategy, often it's, if you could hear the sound, the laughing and all this stuff, people are often way too busy, but it is a benefit and a cost. And I know I talked about this morning. Whether it's worth it or not. Well, maybe. It depends, but usually. I'm going to breeze past this too. Here is my most controversial piece of this talk. I want to talk about multiple monitors. I am controversial because I had, at one point, the high point, I had 3 monitors in my office back when I had a full-time job, and I was really proud of that because everybody else had 2. So that meant that I was clearly more important. The company had spent extra money to get me one more. No, they hadn't actually, because I brought in my own. They wouldn't give me another, but I just brought one in and sat it there. It was that important to me. The thing is, there's a number of related laws here that justify why I am not a believer in multiple monitors. Imagine that this were your office. How much are you getting done? How focused are you in this environment if you can see all this stuff? But think about what a developer does. As a developer, I read, I write, and I think. That's more or less the 3 things that I do. Is this view, imagine I have 4 monitors on my desk. Is this helping me read, write, and think? Well, I could jump between a lot of things. I don't know if that's helping me think. And if I'm trying to write down here in this bottom left window, if there's movement over in one of these other windows, is that really helping me write, or is it actually just distracting me? In my experience, seeing lots of things at once makes it hard for me to read, write, or think. I just find it stressful. So my unpopular opinion is that when I'm reading, I don't want to see anything else. I just want a full screen of just what I'm reading. Full screen. When I'm writing, I don't want to see anything else. And that includes with code. I will 3-finger swipe on my Mac to move between the code and the browser, for instance, but I rarely split screen because I usually don't actually need to see 2 things at the same time since I literally can't. My eyes can focus on one thing, so I will just gesture to move between. And when I'm thinking, I want to be away from the machine, so I get away from the machine. So when I'm writing, this is what my editor looks like. Notice how everything is hidden. You can't see the time. You can't see the bar across the bottom. It is just pure code. And this is wonderful. This feels low stress. It's really nice. When I'm reading, this is my experience. Again, all the OS Chrome is hidden. It's just content. So this is in. And when I'm thinking, I would rather get away from my computer. I go ride on a bike. Like if I'm stuck, I go ride my bike. I go to the gym and lift. I go on a walk. That's how I want to think about things. The book Deep Work by Cal Newport, a wonderful book that gets at this idea. And it's part of even why I like being independent because, man, if you put me in a place like this and told me to write code, I would really struggle. I would be very distracted by an open work environment with all the hubbub. And just side note, do you know how much savings they've gotten by creating these open offices? It's a travesty. It's all about money, y'all. That's the whole thing. They just don't want to give you a door because it costs extra. Like, that's not fair. So yes, to close out here on this very important point, multiple monitors let us see many things at once. I can switch focus quickly. And yes, I do look like a badass, which is worth something. But if I'm reading, writing, or thinking, I'm not convinced they're necessarily better because it does mean more distractions, more window management, more cursor management. Like, where's my cursor? Oh, it's on that over there. Let me move it over here. More friction when traveling and docking because now it works differently. If I screenshot, I get multiple windows. Well, I only wanted this screenshot. Yeah, issues. So kind of a funny way for me to end this, but I'm going to come in here for a summary. So I talked about Shipley's 6 dimensions. I would encourage you to hold on to this, and you could Google for it. This is the sort of thing that you could basically put up on your wall in your office to say, am I thinking in terms of software trade-offs? Because I feel like his 6 dimensions encapsulate trade-offs in software better than anything else that I've seen. And I want to also emphasize to you, for exceptional results in life, you need to embrace weird. Like normal behaviors produce average results. If you want to be an outlier, you've got to choose to act like one. So that means, maybe doing some things that are a little odd. Avoid always and never. If you hear somebody saying those words, immediately your ears should perk up. You should instead ask, what's the trade-off? What do I have to sacrifice to get this? So my consultancy is React.js Consulting. I specialize in front-end development, automated testing, working in TypeScript. I help teams accelerate their development. I'd love to work with you. And I'm just about to publish another course on DomeTrain. I also have a bunch of courses out on Pluralsight. So if you want to find me, this is how you find me. I also have a link to these slides up there at that bit.ly URL. If you didn't get the QR code earlier, take a shot of this. And I am 1 minute over. Oh, my word, I've never done that before. That's wrong. Sorry, everybody. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.